My name is Veronica, and I'm 35 years old. I'm sitting in a courtroom right now watching my own mother being led away in handcuffs. For 15 years, I saved every single penny I could for my daughter Emma's college education. 6 months ago, I discovered my mother had stolen every cent of it, $199,000 gone. When I confronted her, she actually laughed in my face and said thanks for funding my dream retirement. Before I share what happened next, where are you watching from today? Please hit that like button and subscribe. If you believe families should protect each other, not betray each other, let me tell you how a simple bank statement changed everything. The story really begins when Emma was just 3 years old. My ex-husband Brian had just walked out on us, leaving nothing but empty promises and a pile of unpaid bills. The divorce papers came with no child support agreement because he had conveniently lost his job right before filing. I was 23 alone and terrified about how I would give my daughter the future she deserved. I worked as a registered nurse at Riverside Medical Center during the day, pulling 12-hour shifts that left my feet aching and my back screaming. But that wasn't enough. Every night after tucking Emma into bed, I would sit at my laptop doing medical coding work until my eyes burned. 4 hours of sleep became my normal. Coffee became my best friend. But every time I looked at Emma's peaceful sleeping face, I knew it would all be worth it someday. My mother Dorothy moved in with us about a year after the divorce. She was 58, then recently widowed after my father passed from a sudden heart attack. She showed up at my door one rainy October evening with 2 suitcases and red-rimmed eyes, saying she couldn't bear to stay in their empty house anymore. How could I turn away my own mother when she needed me? At first, having her there felt like a blessing. Dorothy would pick Emma up from daycare when I had to work late. She cooked hearty meals that filled our small apartment with the comforting smells of pot roast and apple pie. She taught Emma to braid her hair and read her bedtime stories when I was too exhausted to keep my eyes open. For the first time since Brian left, our little home felt complete. I had opened a special savings account for Emma at Community First Bank the week after the divorce was finalized. Every month I deposited whatever I could spare. Sometimes it was $500. Sometimes when overtime was good, it could be $2,000. I kept a little notebook where I tracked every deposit, calculating how much we would need for tuition room and board textbooks and all those college expenses that add up so quickly. One evening, about 6 months after Dorothy moved in, she was helping me pay bills at the kitchen table. I had just made another deposit into Emma's college fund and was updating my notebook. Dorothy watched me carefully, recording the numbers, and suggested something that seemed so reasonable at the time. "You know, honey," she said, stirring sugar into her tea, "what if something happens to you? Heaven forbid, but you should have someone else on that account who can access it for Emma if needed. Someone you trust completely." The idea made sense. I was working myself to exhaustion, driving long distances for my night shifts, barely sleeping. Accidents happen. If something did happen to me, Emma's college money would be tied up in legal proceedings for who knows how long. So the next week, I added Dorothy as a joint account holder. She came with me to the bank, signed the papers, and hugged me afterward, telling me I was such a responsible mother. For 12 years, our routine never changed. I worked, I saved, I sacrificed. I wore the same 3 pairs of scrubs on rotation until they practically fell apart. My co-workers would go out for drinks on Friday nights while I headed home to my second job. I packed peanut butter sandwiches for lunch every single day while they ordered takeout. When the other nurses talked about their vacation plans to Hawaii or Europe, I just smiled and said, maybe next year, knowing next year would be the same. Emma grew into the most incredible young woman during those years. She inherited my work ethic and her grandmother's charm. By high school, she was pulling straight A's volunteering at the hospital where I worked, and shadowing doctors during her summer breaks. She wanted to be a pediatric surgeon. She told me to help sick children get better. Every sacrifice felt justified when I heard her talk about her dreams with such passion. Dorothy was there for all of it. She attended every parent-teacher conference when I couldn't get off work. She cheered the loudest at Emma's science fair presentations. On the nights when I was too tired to help with calculus homework, Dorothy would sit with Emma for hours looking up YouTube tutorials to figure it out together. She became more than a grandmother to Emma. She was a second mother. We had this tradition where once a month the 3 of us would sit down with my laptop and research colleges together. Emma would show us virtual campus tours while Dorothy made popcorn and I calculated tuition costs. We made vision boards with pictures of dorm rooms and graduation ceremonies. Dorothy would always say that Emma was destined for greatness, that all our hard work would pay off when she walked across that stage with her medical degree. the college fund grew slowly but steadily. By the time Emma was a sophomore in high school, we had $90,000 saved. By her junior year, it was $140,000. I remember the night we hit $175,000. Dorothy opened a bottle of champagne she had been saving, and we toasted to Emma's future. Even Emma got a tiny sip, and Dorothy made a speech about how proud my father would have been of all of us. Looking back now, I should have noticed that Dorothy's interest in the account details was becoming more intense. She started asking specific questions about withdrawal limits, transfer procedures, and whether the bank sent paper statements or just electronic ones. But I thought she was just being thorough, helping me understand all the financial details I might have overlooked. After all, she had managed her and my father's finances for 40 years. She knew about money in ways I didn't. The changes in Dorothy started in March of Emma's senior year. It was subtle at first, so subtle I almost missed it entirely. She came home from what she said was a doctor's appointment carrying a designer handbag I had never seen before. When I complimented it, she brushed it off, saying she found it at a thrift store for $20. But I knew designer bags, even used, that particular brand, would cost hundreds. Then came the jewelry. A diamond tennis bracelet appeared on her wrist one morning, new earrings that caught the light in a way that only real gems do. When Emma asked about them, Dorothy said they were old pieces of my father's mother's that she had finally had cleaned. But I had helped Dorothy go through all of my grandmother's jewelry after she passed. These pieces were never in that collection. The shopping bags started accumulating in her room. Nordstrom, Saks, Neiman Marcus. She tried to hide them in her closet, but I saw them when I was putting away laundry. When I asked if she was having financial troubles and was using credit cards, she laughed and patted my cheek like I was still a child. "Darling, I've made some very smart investments with my retirement fund," she said. "A woman my age deserves to treat herself after all those years of scrimping and saving. Don't you worry about me." Then came the trips. First it was a weekend in Miami with some friends from her book club. Then a week in Vegas for a cousin's birthday, though I couldn't remember her ever mentioning this cousin before. Then a 2-week Caribbean cruise that she booked last minute because the price was just too good to pass up. She always had an explanation, always had a reason, and I was too exhausted from work to question it too deeply. Emma received her acceptance letter from Johns Hopkins on a Tuesday afternoon in April. I was at work when she called me screaming with joy through the phone. She had not only been accepted, but was being considered for a partial merit scholarship. The tuition was $80,000 a year, but with our savings and her potential scholarship, we could make it work without taking on massive student loans. That night, we had a celebration dinner at home. Dorothy made Emma's favorite lasagna and bought a cake from the fancy bakery downtown. We sat around the table and Emma couldn't stop talking about the medical program, the research opportunities, the hospitals where she could do her rotations. Dorothy seemed genuinely happy taking pictures and posting on Facebook about her brilliant granddaughter. After Emma went to bed, Dorothy and I cleaned up the kitchen together. She was unusually interested in the financial logistics of Emma starting college. When would we need to pay the first tuition installment? How exactly did the transfer process work? Would I need to go to the bank in person, or could it be done online? I explained that I planned to go to the bank the following week to start the withdrawal process for the first semester's payment. "You know," Dorothy said while drying a plate, "you might want to keep some of that money in the account. Think about it. What if Emma needs emergency funds during college? What if she wants to do a study abroad program? You should really look into student loans for at least part of it." I reminded her that the whole point of saving all these years was to avoid student loans. Emma shouldn't start her career drowning in debt like so many young doctors do. Dorothy nodded and agreed, but there was something in her expression I couldn't quite read. A tightness around her eyes that I had never seen before. Over the next few days, Dorothy received several phone calls that she took in private. She would see the caller ID and immediately leave the room, closing her bedroom door and speaking in hushed tones. When I asked who was calling, she said it was just her financial advisor, that she was restructuring some investments. It made sense. She had been spending more, so maybe she was liquidating some assets. The Sunday before I planned to go to the bank was Mother's Day. Dorothy made a big production of it, cooking breakfast for Emma and me, giving us both cards with long emotional messages about how much we meant to her. She kept hugging us, kept telling us how proud she was to be part of our family. Emma gave her a handmade scrapbook filled with photos from over the years, and Dorothy actually cried looking through it. That evening, Dorothy suggested we should consider keeping the college fund intact as an emergency backup and take out loans instead. She had done research, she said, and shown me printouts about loan forgiveness programs for doctors, about how the interest was tax deductible, about how keeping liquid assets was important. I thanked her for the research, but explained that I had made up my mind. We had saved this money specifically for Emma's education, and that's what it would be used for. Dorothy's face went through a series of expressions I had never seen before. First disappointment, then something that looked almost like panic, and finally a resignation that seemed to age her 10 years in an instant. She excused herself early, saying she had a headache, and went to her room. I heard her on the phone again, her voice urgent, but too muffled to make out the words. Monday morning arrived grey and drizzly, matching none of the excitement I felt about finally being able to use the money we had saved for so long. I dropped Emma at school, where she was practically floating through the hallways, telling all her friends about Johns Hopkins, and headed straight to Community First Bank. I had all my documents ready, including Emma's acceptance letter and the invoice from the university for the first semester. Sarah, the bank manager, who had helped me open the account all those years ago, greeted me with her usual warm smile. We chatted about Emma's acceptance and how proud I must be as she pulled up my account on her computer. Then her fingers stopped moving on the keyboard. The colour literally drained from her face as she stared at the screen. "Ms. Chen," she said slowly, "I think there might be some kind of error here. Let me just double-check something." She typed frantically for a moment, clicked through several screens, then looked up at me with an expression I will never forget. It was the look you give someone when you're about to deliver the worst possible news. "The account balance," she said quietly, "is $247. The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of her desk to steady myself. That was impossible. There should have been $199,000 in that account. I had checked it online just last month, though now that I thought about it, I had only looked at the summary page, not the actual balance details. Sarah turned her monitor toward me and showed me the transaction history. My heart stopped. Over the past 4 months, there had been 15 withdrawals ranging from $10,000 to $20,000 each. Every single one had been made in person at different branches across the city and state. Every single one had been authorized with both signatures on the account, mine and Dorothy's. But I never made any of those withdrawals. I whispered, my voice barely audible over the roaring in my ears. Sarah's expression was sympathetic but professional. She printed out all the transaction records showing me the withdrawal slips. Dorothy's signature was on every one, along with what looked like my signature but wasn't. She had forged it. My own mother had forged my signature and stolen my daughter's future. I called Dorothy immediately, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. She answered on the 3rd ring, and I could hear spa music in the background. "Hi, honey," she said cheerfully. "I'm just getting a hot stone massage." "What's going on?" "The money is gone," I said, my voice breaking. "Emma's college fund is gone. You took it all." There was a long pause. Then unbelievably she laughed. Not a nervous laugh or an embarrassed laugh, but a genuine, amused laugh, like I had just told her a funny joke. "Thanks for funding my dream retirement, honey," she said, her voice light and carefree. "I've been living like a church mouse for 60 years. I deserve this." "You stole from your own granddaughter," I screamed, not caring that other bank customers were staring at me. "You stole her future. I didn't steal anything," Dorothy replied calmly. "My name is on that account. I had every right to that money. You can't prove I stole anything. And sweetie, you really should have read the fine print when you added me to the account. Joint ownership means equal access. The bank will tell you the same thing." She hung up before I could respond. I stood there in the bank lobby, phone still pressed to my ear, unable to process what had just happened. Sarah gently led me to a private office and brought me a glass of water. She explained that Dorothy was technically correct. As a joint account holder, she had legal access to the funds. The forged signatures were concerning, but proving forgery when someone is already on the account would be complicated. I drove home in a daze, running 2 red lights, because I couldn't focus on anything except the devastating reality that my mother had betrayed us. When I got to our apartment, Dorothy's bedroom door was open. The room was completely empty except for a single piece of paper on the stripped bed. "Emma's smart," the note read in Dorothy's distinctive handwriting. "She'll get scholarships, and you're young enough to start saving again. I've earned this." That's when my body finally gave out. The room went black around the edges, my chest felt like it was being crushed, and I couldn't breathe. I managed to dial 911 before I collapsed. The paramedics who responded were from my own hospital colleagues who knew me well. They recognized a panic attack immediately and stayed with me until I calmed down. Dr. Martinez, one of the emergency physicians I worked with, regularly sat beside my hospital bed and held my hand while I sobbed out the entire story. He didn't offer false platitudes or tell me everything would be okay. Instead, he gave me the business card of his sister, a lawyer, who specialized in financial crimes within families. "You're going to fight this," he said firmly, "and you're going to win." Dorothy might think she's gotten away with it, but she's wrong. The legal system has ways of dealing with people like her. Emma arrived at the hospital an hour later, having been called by the school when I didn't answer my phone. I had to look into my daughter's eyes and tell her that the money we had saved for her dreams was gone, that her own grandmother had stolen it. She didn't cry. She just held me while I fell apart, whispering that we would figure it out together, that this wouldn't stop her from becoming a doctor. That night, in my hospital bed with Emma curled up beside me, I made a decision. Dorothy thought she had won. She thought she could take everything we had worked for and disappear into her dream retirement. But she had underestimated me. She had underestimated both of us. The fight was just beginning. Catherine Morrison's law office was nothing like what I expected. Instead of the intimidating dark wood and leather I had imagined, it was bright and modern, with pictures of her own family covering one wall. She was younger than I expected too, maybe 40, with sharp eyes that missed nothing as I laid out my story and showed her all the documentation I had brought. She listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and studied the transaction records Sarah had printed for me. Then she pulled up something on her computer and turned the screen toward me. "This is interesting," she said, pointing to a detail in our account agreement I had never noticed. "See this section here? Purpose of account designated as Emma's college fund." This wasn't just any savings account. You specifically designated its purpose when you opened it. That's going to be important. Over the next 2 hours, Catherine laid out our legal strategy. First, we would pursue a civil case for breach of fiduciary duty and fraud. Despite Dorothy's name being on the account, she had a moral and potentially legal obligation not to use funds that were clearly designated for her granddaughter's education. The forged signatures would help establish a pattern of deception. But Catherine wasn't satisfied with just the civil approach. She asked me to gather every piece of communication I had with Dorothy about the account over the years. Every email, every text message, every birthday card where she mentioned Emma's college fund. I spent the next 3 days going through my computer, my phone boxes of old cards and letters. What I found painted a damning picture. There were over 200 emails where Dorothy explicitly acknowledged the money was for Emma's education. Messages where she praised me for my sacrifice, where she offered to help me budget to save more, where she discussed Emma's future college plans. In one particularly damaging email from just 6 months ago, she had written that she was proud to be the guardian of Emma's dreams and would never do anything to jeopardize her granddaughter's future. I also found text messages between Dorothy and her book club friends that Emma helped me retrieve from a cloud backup Dorothy didn't know existed. In them, Dorothy bragged about hitting the jackpot and finally being able to live the life she deserved. One message sent the day after she made the first withdrawal read that her ship had finally come in and she was going to make the most of it while she still could. Catherine's private investigator, a former FBI agent named Marcus, discovered even more. Dorothy hadn't just taken vacations with the money. She had purchased a condo in a luxury retirement community in Florida for $180,000 cash. She had bought a new Mercedes. She had invested $50,000 in some kind of timeshare scheme. In 4 months, she had burned through almost all of Emma's college fund. The investigation also revealed something that made my stomach turn. This wasn't Dorothy's first time doing something like this. Marcus found records of 2 men Dorothy had dated in the past 5 years, both of whom had filed police reports claiming she had stolen money from them. Neither case had gone anywhere because Dorothy had convinced them she was just borrowing the money, then disappeared before they could take legal action. My mother was a serial con artist, and I had been her biggest score. Emma, brave soul that she was, insisted on being part of the legal process. She wrote a victim impact statement that would break your heart. She described working since she was 14, saving her babysitting money, her birthday money, every penny she earned to add to her college fund. She wrote about watching me work myself to exhaustion, about the vacations we never took, the clothes we never bought, the restaurants we never ate at all so she could have a future. She wrote about how her grandmother had sat with her filling out college applications, knowing the entire time she was planning to steal the money that would pay for that education. The first hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in July. Dorothy showed up looking like she had just stepped out of a fashion magazine, wearing what I recognized as a $3,000 suit and carrying a designer bag that cost more than I made in a month. She had hired her own attorney, a slick-looking man who immediately filed a motion to dismiss, arguing that Dorothy had every legal right to the money as a joint account holder. The judge, an older woman named Patricia Hendricks, was not impressed. She reviewed our evidence, particularly the emails and the designated purpose of the account, and denied the motion to dismiss. She ordered Dorothy to provide documentation showing that the withdrawals were either authorized by me or used for Emma's benefit. Dorothy's attorney asked for 30 days to gather this documentation. Outside the courthouse, Dorothy approached me for the first time since that phone call at the bank. She was still playing the victim, tears rolling down her perfectly made-up face. "How can you do this to your own mother?" she wailed loud enough for passing people to hear. "After everything I've done for you and Emma. I raised you. I helped raise her. This is how you repay me." I wanted to scream at her, to grab her by her designer lapels and shake her until she admitted what she had done. But Catherine had coached me for this moment. I looked Dorothy straight in the eye and said calmly, "You stole my daughter's education fund. You betrayed your own granddaughter. This is just the beginning of the consequences for your actions." Dorothy's tears dried up instantly, and she leaned in close enough that only I could hear her. "You always were too soft," she hissed. "That's why Brian left you. That's why you'll always be alone. At least I had the guts to take what I wanted from life." Catherine quickly steered me away, but those words echoed in my head for days. Was I too soft? Should I have seen this coming? The self-doubt was eating me alive, affecting my work, my sleep, everything. That's when my colleagues stepped in. Word had spread through the hospital about what happened, and the support was overwhelming. The nursing staff organised a fundraiser. The doctors I worked with contributed generous amounts. Even the custodial staff people, who made far less than I did, contributed what they could. In 2 weeks, they had raised $15,000 for Emma's education. It wasn't nearly enough to replace what was stolen, but it was enough to restore my faith in humanity. Meanwhile, Catherine was building our case methodically. She had found a financial forensics expert who could trace exactly where the money went. She had subpoenaed Dorothy's financial records, her phone records, even her social media accounts. The picture that emerged was of a woman who had planned this theft for months, maybe even years. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dorothy's vanity, the same trait that had her showing up to court in designer clothes bought with stolen money, would be her downfall. Catherine's investigator, Marcus, discovered that Dorothy had been documenting her new luxury lifestyle all over social media using fake names, but posting very real pictures. There she was on Instagram as Diana Richardson, sipping champagne on a yacht in Miami, just 2 days after the first withdrawal. There she was on Facebook as Dottie Anderson, showing off her new condo with a post about how financial independence at 60 was the best gift a woman could give herself. The timestamps on these posts lined up perfectly with the withdrawals from Emma's account. But the real smoking gun came when Marcus discovered something Dorothy had hidden much more carefully. She had opened 5 credit cards using my social security number, racking up $45,000 in debt. When Catherine showed me the credit report, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Purchases at luxury resorts, high-end restaurants, jewelry stores, all under my name, while I was eating peanut butter sandwiches and wearing worn-out scrubs. "This changes everything," Catherine said, barely containing her excitement. "This is identity theft. This is federal fraud. Your mother isn't just facing civil penalties anymore. She's looking at criminal charges." The FBI Financial Crimes Unit took over that aspect of the case. Agent Thompson, a no-nonsense woman who reminded me of my high school principal, interviewed me for 3 hours, going through every detail of Dorothy's time living with us. She was particularly interested in the forged signatures on the withdrawal slips. "People think family financial fraud isn't serious," Agent Thompson told me. "But it's one of the most common and devastating crimes we see. Your mother fits a pattern we see often. Elderly parents or grandparents who feel entitled to their children's money, who justify theft as collecting what they're owed for raising them. The fact that she stole from her own granddaughter and committed identity theft makes this particularly egregious. Dorothy must have sensed the walls closing in because she made a critical mistake. She reached out to me through a mutual acquaintance, asking for a meeting to discuss a settlement. Catherine advised against it, but then had a thought. If Dorothy wanted to talk, we should let her, but I would wear a wire. The meeting was set for a coffee shop downtown. Dorothy showed up looking older, tired, with her perfect facade starting to crack. She ordered a latte with extra foam, just like always, as if we were having a normal mother-daughter coffee date. "Veronica," she started, her voice honeyed with fake concern. "This has all gotten out of hand. We're family. We shouldn't be fighting like this. I'm willing to give back some of the money if you drop all these ridiculous charges. Some of the money I kept my voice steady, remembering Agent Thompson's instructions to let Dorothy talk, to let her incriminate herself. I deserve something for all those years I helped raise Emma, Dorothy continued. Do you know what I sacrificed? I could have traveled, could have remarried, but I stayed to help you. That money is partially mine. I earned it. You earned it by babysitting your own granddaughter, by living rent-free in my apartment for 12 years, by eating the food I paid for. Dorothy's mask slipped completely then, her face contorted with an ugly rage I had never seen before. You want to know the truth, she spat. I thought I deserved it more than Emma. What has she done to earn that money? Nothing. She was just born lucky enough to have a mother stupid enough to work herself to death for her. I worked my whole life raised in. You helped with Emma, and what did I get? Nothing. So yes, I took it. I took what was mine. And there it was, on tape. A full confession. I took every penny, she continued, and I'd do it again. You can't prove I wasn't entitled to it. My name was on that account. What about the credit cards you opened in my name? I asked quietly. Dorothy went pale. How did you know about that? The FBI knows Dorothy. They know about all of it. The identity theft, the fraud, the men you conned before me. This isn't going away. Dorothy stood up so fast her chair fell over. You're recording this, aren't you, you little snake? You're just like your father, always thinking you're better than everyone else. Well, I hope Emma enjoys community college, because you'll never see a penny of that money again. She stormed out, leaving her latte untouched. I sat there for another 10 minutes, making sure the recording was complete, letting the tears I had been holding back finally fall. My own mother had just admitted she stole from us because she felt entitled to it, because she thought she deserved it more than her own granddaughter. The recording was the nail in Dorothy's coffin. Her attorney tried to argue it was obtained illegally, but since Dorothy had agreed to the meeting and I was a party to the conversation, it was completely admissible. Faced with federal identity theft charges on top of the fraud charges, Dorothy's attorney advised her to take a plea deal, but Dorothy in her arrogance refused. She wanted a trial. She was convinced she could make a jury sympathize with her, the poor grandmother who had given up her golden years to help her ungrateful daughter. It was a massive miscalculation. The trial was set for September. In the meantime, the community support for Emma continued to pour in. A GoFundMe campaign went viral after a local news station picked up our story. Donations came from all over the country, from parents who understood sacrifice from grandparents, horrified by Dorothy's actions, from young people who had their own college funds stolen by family members. In 6 weeks, it raised $50,000. Emma, meanwhile, had thrown herself into work. She took on 3 part-time jobs working at a grocery store, tutoring kids in math and science, and doing data entry at night. She was determined to earn as much as she could before starting at Johns Hopkins. The admissions office, after learning about our situation, had increased her merit scholarship, but it still wasn't enough to cover everything. I sold my car and started taking the bus. I sold jewelry, electronics, anything of value we had. I moved us to a smaller apartment to save on rent. Every penny went toward Emma's education. I would not let Dorothy win. I would not let her steal my daughter's dreams. The trial began on a crisp September morning. The courtroom was packed not just with reporters who had been following the story, but with other victims of family financial fraud who came to show support. Emma sat in the front row, flanked by my colleagues from the hospital. I had never felt less alone. The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney James Wheeler, laid out the case methodically. He showed the jury the trail of evidence, from the designated purpose of the account, to the forged signatures to the credit cards opened in my name. He played the recording of Dorothy's confession, her voice filling the courtroom as she admitted to taking the money because she felt she deserved it more than Emma. Dorothy's defense was exactly what we expected. Her attorney painted her as a devoted mother and grandmother who had sacrificed her own happiness to help raise Emma. He argued that the money in the account was as much hers as mine, that she had contributed to the household in non-monetary ways that entitled her to compensation. He even suggested that I had verbally agreed to give her the money, but was now backing out because of family pressure. Then Dorothy took the stand. She was dressed conservatively, trying to look like a sweet grandmother, but the prosecutor saw right through it. He grilled her about the forged signatures, about the credit cards, about the men she had conned before. Dorothy tried to maintain her composure, but cracks started showing. When he asked her about the Instagram posts showing off her luxury purchases, she claimed they were gifts from friends. When he showed receipts proving she had bought them with Emma's college money, she said I had given her permission. When he played the recording of her confession, she actually tried to claim it was taken out of context. The moment that sealed her fate came when Emma was called to testify. My 17-year-old daughter walked to the stand with a dignity that made me proud and broke my heart simultaneously. She spoke about the promises Dorothy had made to her, the dreams they had discussed, the plans they had made together for her college years. She talked about finding out the money was gone, about watching me collapse from the stress, about working 3 jobs to try to save enough for even one semester of college. The prosecutor asked Emma one final question. How has your grandmother's actions affected your relationship with her? Emma looked directly at Dorothy and said clearly, she didn't just steal money, she stole my trust and family. She stole my mother's health and peace of mind. She stole years of sacrifice and turned them into nothing. I don't have a grandmother anymore. I have a thief who happens to share my DNA. Dorothy actually started crying then, but it was too late for tears to save her. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Grand theft fraud, identity theft, elder financial abuse, which was ironic since she was the elder in question. The sentencing would come later, but Dorothy was remanded into custody immediately as she was now considered a flight risk. As the bailiff put handcuffs on Dorothy, she turned to look at me one last time. You've destroyed your own mother, she said loud enough for everyone to hear. I stood up and met her gaze. No, I said clearly. You destroyed yourself with greed. She was led away and I never looked back. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. The judge, after reviewing all the evidence and considering Dorothy's lack of remorse and prior victims, sentenced her to 5 years in prison with 3 years to be served and 2 years of supervised probation. She was also ordered to pay full restitution of $199,000 plus interest, though everyone knew that money was mostly gone. What we did recover came from the sale of Dorothy's Florida condo and her Mercedes. The condo had been purchased for $180,000, but sold at auction for $165,000 due to the quick sale requirements. After legal fees were paid, we received about $140,000. It wasn't everything, but it was enough for Emma to start at Johns Hopkins without taking out crushing loans. The story had gained national attention by then. We were invited to appear on morning talk shows, but we declined most of them. We just wanted to move forward. However, the publicity had an unexpected benefit. Other victims of Dorothy's scams came forward and she faced additional charges in 2 other states. Her 5-year sentence was extended to 8 years. Johns Hopkins, moved by Emma's story and her incredible resilience, offered her a special hardship grant that covered most of her remaining tuition. The community support combined with what we recovered and Emma's earnings from her jobs meant she could attend her dream school after all. I started seeing a therapist to deal with the trauma of my mother's betrayal. Dr. Santos helped me understand that Dorothy's actions weren't my fault, that I couldn't have predicted that my own mother would steal from her granddaughter. She helped me work through the guilt of not seeing the signs sooner, the anger that still woke me up at night, the grief of losing a mother who maybe never really existed the way I thought she did. The support group I started for victims of family financial fraud grew quickly. We met twice a month in the hospital conference room, sharing our stories, our legal strategies, our healing journeys. It turned out that family financial fraud was far more common than anyone talked about. Parents stealing from children, children stealing from elderly parents, siblings, destroying each other over money. But together, we found strength and strategies to fight back. Emma thrived at Johns Hopkins despite everything we had been through. She threw herself into her studies with a determination that her professors noticed immediately. She joined research projects, volunteered at free clinics, and maintained a near-perfect GPA. When her classmates went to parties, Emma was in the library. When they went on spring break trips, Emma picked up extra shifts at her campus job. One day, about 6 months after Dorothy's sentencing, I received a letter forwarded from my attorney. It was from Dorothy in prison. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity got the better of me. It was 3 pages of self-pity, blame, and justification. She wrote that prison was killing her, that I had destroyed her golden years, that I would regret this when she was gone. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what she had done to Emma. I threw it in the trash and never responded. It's been 2 years now since that morning at the bank when my world fell apart. Emma is in her 2nd year at Johns Hopkins, carrying a 3.9 GPA and already being courted by top medical schools for her future residency. She works as a research assistant in a pediatric oncology lab, and her professor says she has the makings of a brilliant physician. I still work my 2 jobs, but now it's to help Emma with living expenses and to rebuild my own savings. The therapy has helped enormously. I no longer wake up in cold sweats reliving that moment of betrayal. I can talk about what happened without my chest tightening and my hands shaking. Dorothy is still in prison. She's been denied early release twice due to her lack of remorse and the additional charges from other states. I heard through the legal grapevine that she's been running small scams even in prison, charging other inmates for financial advice and trying to get their families to put money in her commissary account. Some people never change. Emma and I have built something beautiful from the ashes of Dorothy's betrayal. Our relationship is stronger than ever. We don't have secrets. We don't have lies. We have absolute trust and respect for each other. Emma says that going through this taught her more about integrity and resilience than any classroom could. The support group I started has helped dozens of families recover stolen money and find justice. We've successfully lobbied for stronger laws protecting family members from financial fraud. We've created resources and guides for people going through what we went through. From our pain came purpose. I've been asked if I forgive Dorothy. The truth is I don't. Some betrayals cut too deep for forgiveness. She stole from a child. She stole from her own granddaughter's future. She looked Emma in the eye for years, encouraging her dreams while planning to destroy them. That's not something I can forgive, but I also don't carry hatred. Hatred would mean she still has power over me, and I won't give her that. She's a cautionary tale now, a reminder that family doesn't always mean safety, that love doesn't always mean trust. She taught me to be stronger, smarter, more careful. In trying to destroy us, she only made us unbreakable. Emma will graduate in 2 more years. She's already been accepted into several research programs and has professors writing her glowing recommendations for medical school. She wants to specialize in pediatric surgery, particularly for children from low-income families who can't afford the best care. She says our experience taught her that everyone deserves a chance at their dreams, regardless of their financial situation. Sometimes young people reach out to me after hearing our story, kids whose college funds have been stolen by addicted parents or grandparents who felt entitled to their savings. I tell them what I wish someone had told me that day at the bank. This isn't the end, it's a detour. Your dreams might take longer to achieve, might require more sacrifice, but they're still possible. Don't let someone else's greed define your future. I think about the mother I thought I had. The one who helped with homework and made Halloween costumes and cheered at school plays. Maybe that woman existed once, or maybe she was always a performance, a long con that took decades to play out. I'll never know for sure, and I've made peace with that uncertainty. What I do know is this: Emma and I survived. We more than survived, we thrived. We took Dorothy's betrayal and transformed it into determination. We took her greed and answered it with generosity from our community. We took her lies and responded with truth that helped other families protect themselves. Sometimes the greatest gift isn't what someone gives you, but what their betrayal teaches you about your own strength. Dorothy thought she was stealing Emma's future. Instead, she revealed exactly how unstoppable we are when we stand together. She thought she was funding her dream retirement with our sacrifice. Instead, she funded a movement of families protecting themselves from predators like her. Emma will become a doctor. She'll save lives and heal families and make the world a little bit better. She'll do it without the trust fund we saved for her, but with something far more valuable. The knowledge that she can overcome anything, that no betrayal can stop her, that dreams defended are dreams achieved. And me, I'll keep working, keep fighting, keep helping other families navigate the devastating world of family financial fraud. I'll keep telling our story because silence is what allows predators like Dorothy to succeed. I'll keep building the life we deserve, one honest day at a time. The money Dorothy stole is mostly gone spent on her brief taste of luxury that ended in a prison cell. But what she really tried to steal, our hope, our trust in each other, our dreams for the future, those things she could never touch. Those belong to us, and no one, not even family, can take them away. Looking back, I realized the $247 left in that account was Dorothy's biggest mistake. If she had taken everything, the bank might not have noticed the pattern as quickly. That small amount left behind in her greed and haste was the thread that unraveled her entire scheme. It's almost poetic that her inability to fully empty the account is what led to her downfall. What would you have done in my situation if you discovered your own parent had stolen your child's future? Would you have fought back or let them get away with it? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and justice. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that betrayal doesn't have to mean defeat. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, no matter who tries to steal your dreams, you have the power to reclaim them. Stay strong, protect what's yours, and never let anyone, family or otherwise, convince you that their greed matters more than your future.